Hi, Jason, and welcome to the Plucking Up podcast. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation.
Hey, Liz. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have it.
So will you start us off by taking us as far back into your story as you're willing to go, and specifically with the lens of kind of as you think about who you were as a kid, what you were interested in, maybe your family story or some part of your childhood. Of course, with hindsight, do you feel like you can look back and go like, okay, there were some things that I saw from the very beginning, or does it all kind of just feel like a big surprise?
I think that it is a very logical path for me, but it is not a logical path from the outside. And I think that the greatest career trajectories are like that because life is not linear. Life is reactive. We do something and it introduces us to a new idea or a new concept or a new person or new whatever. And then that sends us into some other direction and then we repeat it. I will answer your question, but first I'm going to just do this obnoxious name drop because it's reminding me. I had a conversation a couple years ago with Malcolm Gladwell, and I was really interested to ask him what he thinks a Malcolm Gladwell project is. Like, how does he evaluate what is a Malcolm Gladwell? He's got this very distinctive voice and sensibility. And so what is the lens that he's using to see things through? And his answer was more wonderful than I could have expected, which was he said, to the best of his ability, he tries never to define himself to himself. And the reason for that is, and these were his exact words, I jotted them down as soon as I heard it. He said, because self-conceptions are powerfully limiting. That if you have too narrow an idea of what it is that you do or who you are, then you will turn down all of these opportunities along the way that don't match that narrow definition.
Yeah.
But by liberating yourself from a self-conception, you become more open to exploring. And I'd say that over time, that's basically what I was able to achieve for myself. If we rewind back to the beginning, I was a maker. I was a creator a create, not in the obnoxious, like I'm a YouTube creator, but I just mean like, like as a little kid in elementary school, I was drawing comic books. And then in high school, I had a blog before the word blog existed.
Okay.
And I was writing for local music magazines. I have this hypothesis that every human being has the same skill. Like there's just one skill that humans have, and that skill is pattern recognition, but everybody recognizes a different pattern. And when I look back, I see that what I was able to do was recognize patterns of communication. I could see how things were communicated in different mediums and then replicate it. And, poorly at first, but then better, hopefully, over time. And you and I and everyone, I think, should hopefully over time zero in on what we love about recognizing that pattern and where it can bring us, and be open to that. Just because we recognized or utilized it in some certain way doesn't mean that's how we have to do it going forward.
Yeah.
I was a reporter, but I don't have to be a reporter. Really, what I am is a person who tells stories. And really, I'm not just a storyteller. I'm a person who digests complicated information and makes that simple for people. And the more I kind of got elemental with what I was doing, the more I was able to go from writing for a music magazine in high school to getting a local newspaper job out of college to working at Men's Health and then Fast Company and then Maxim. That was terrible. And then Entrepreneur and then getting into business and now advising startups and speaking on stages. And like, it's all actually the same thing to me. It's the same thing in which I just gave myself, Malcolm Gladwell style, the liberation to find the most joyful and impactful ways to do the one thing that I know how to do.
Did you have this philosophy all along, or was there a moment for you or like a season where you were kind of like, oh, whoa, wait, I thought I was this, but actually like I'm peeling back. It kind of reminds me, I feel like on LinkedIn right now, the like kind of LinkedIn trend is like, instead of saying what your job is, you say what you do. So it's like, I'm a problem solver who helps organizations, which I think is kind of funny because sometimes it's like, we just need to know who you work for or what you do. But on this, in the context of this conversation, I actually think it's really brilliant. I think that exercise helps you go, not what is your title, not who do you work for, not how long have you been doing it, but what do you actually do in the world? Because that can actually manifest in like 30 or 30,000 different ways,
Yes.
which is what I kind of hear you saying. But how did you come to this conclusion?
Yeah. So you're totally right. I think it's a really useful exercise for anybody for what it's worth. It's a thing that I have a name for, which is the thing that does not change in times of change, which you should be able to
Oh.
articulate in a single sentence that starts with I, and then every word is carefully selected because it is not anchored to something that's easily changeable. So it's the difference between I'm a magazine editor, which is very changeable. All it takes is the president of Entrepreneur Media to decide, like, I can't stand this guy anymore. He's got to go. And then I'm not a magazine editor
Yep.
anymore. So it's the distinction between that and I tell stories in my own voice. Get every word carefully selected because it's not anchored to something that's easily changeable. So stories is something you just cannot take away from me. I can do it in any way. You said like the way that people are communicating on LinkedIn. When I give keynote talks, I often walk people through an exercise to get to this. And then I share that thing of going from I'm a magazine editor to I tell stories in my own voice. And I say, look, like if someone came up to me at a party and asked what I did, I wouldn't say I tell stories in my own voice. That's obnoxious, right? Like we don't do that. But it's a good thing to say to me. It's like a
Yeah.
good way for
Right.
me to understand myself. So did I know that at the start? No. What I do, it's just sort of a matter of course, is I really like stepping back and assessing like what did I just do? And then is there a philosophy behind that? Is there a way to repeat that, to articulate it? An early version of this, for example, is at my very first newspaper job, which was out of college. So I graduated college in 2002. And I got a job at the Gardner News Circulation 6000, writing about nothing. Like nothing was happening in Gardner, Massachusetts. I don't even know if it exists anymore. And then I quit that job and started freelancing. And then I got another newspaper job, and I just kept freelancing. And the freelancing was the thing that ultimately got me to accelerate my career. The
Yeah.
freelancing was the thing that got me in touch with editors who were at larger publications who had a lot to teach me. The freelancing was the thing that allowed me to build a body of work that I could then show off. And anyway, this turned into this philosophy that I started calling work your next job. The idea is that everybody has two sets of opportunities in front of them at any one time. Opportunity set A, opportunity set B. Opportunity set A is everything that is asked of you. So you go to work and you have a boss, and that boss is asking you to do things, and your success is measured by whether or not you do those things. That's opportunity set A. Opportunity set B is everything that is available to you that nobody's asking you to do. And those things, I think, are where actual growth comes from. So nobody was asking me to do the freelancing. I just did that on my own. That was available to me even as I was following this more traditional path. And that's the thing that accelerated my career. And the reason I tell you that is over the course of my career, I just keep stepping back and saying, okay, that worked. What happened? Like, why did that work? What was I doing? And then again, because like my core skill set, I think, is to digest information and then repeat it back to people in easy ways. I just kept doing that. And so I built these layers and layers and layers of philosophy. So the thing that I'm telling you before about the like thing that does not change in times of change is just like a late stage philosophy, and like work your next job is an earlier stage philosophy. And I just kind of keep updating them and sharing them. And it just kind of helps you become a guy who goes on podcasts and says things.
But I feel like what you kind of just taught us was like, here's how to be an entrepreneur, regardless of whether or not you're an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur who has like built a venture and hired people and managed employees, one of the biggest distinctions that I've ever had between my team are people who are entrepreneurial. They're not, I mean, they're employees. They're like, full-time benefit employees. They're only working at my company, but the presence and the space that they take up is very entrepreneurial. And for me, that really is, they're not just doing what they're told. They're thinking about both the company and the venture and the space that we occupy, but then also their own careers and their own brand, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And they're keeping those things in mind, and they're creating opportunities both for themselves and for the company that I didn't necessarily like assign to them, versus folks who have more of just like to be a good employee is to show up and do what the boss says. And I feel like that mentality that you just shared with us is really like, you can be an entrepreneur regardless of whether or not you're formally full-time employed by someone else or
Yes.
not, which also kind of feels like something that doesn't change even when other things change, that you can kind of maintain. If you have that spirit of like, I'm entrepreneurial when I'm freelancing, I'm also entrepreneurial when I'm actually employed by somebody else. That's like a spirit and like a worldview that you carry with you throughout your various iterations.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I can tell you the specific moment in which that started to shift for me, because I didn't think of myself as entrepreneurial for the majority of my media career, let's say. Instead, I really just thought of myself as a guy who makes things. That was it. And
Mm-hmm.
there came this really interesting moment for me, which was it was 2018. I was at Entrepreneur at that point for about 2 years. And I had a book come out. And it wasn't the book that anyone would expect me to come out with as the editor in chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. Instead, it was a very saucy romantic comedy that I had written with my wife. And
Wait,
yeah,
what? I
I
am
know.
so here for this
Yeah,
plot twist.
you didn't
Okay,
see that
I did it.
coming.
I almost interrupted you to make a joke, and the joke that I was going to make was like, what, fantasy romance? So I didn't get all the way there, but I got halfway there.
You got halfway there. It was. So it was about two people who each week sleep together and then critically review each other's performance in a magazine. So that was the premise.
I'm rewatching I'm watching for the first time ever Sex in
Yeah.
the City right now.
Oh, you're late
And
to that game.
yeah, and I don't know if you know the premise, but it's,
Yeah.
Carrie Bradshaw lives
Sure,
in the
sure, sure.
city,
Yep.
but she like talks about her dating escapades. And there is a part of this that it's so frustrating to me that they never address really, like the fact that the people she's sleeping with are reading her call. Like they never
Yeah,
tie
it's
those things
true.
together, and it drives me bananas because I'm like, I want to see the follow-up conversation that when that guy that you're actively dating is reading what you're writing about him to all of New York City, reads it, and his ego gets bruised
Yeah, yeah.
and he dumps you because of it. And so I feel like what you're doing is actually answering the spiritual angst that I have watching Sex in the City, that they're not telling me the whole truth about how this would go down.
Oh my God, I love that. I never thought about that with Sex in the City. I've watched a lot of Sex in the City because my girlfriend from college was really into the show, so we watched a lot of it. And so, well, the novel is called Mr. Nice Guy. You can find out what happens. It's so funny. The origin of this was that in my 20s, I got an email from a sex columnist who was looking for freelance writing advice, and we started up a very tame professional correspondence. But it got me thinking, as I was like engaging with this sex columnist, it got me thinking about what the sex columnist writes about, and then like what would it be like to be in a relationship with this sex columnist, and then like your sex life is then in their work, very much what you're describing. And it gave me the idea for this premise of a novel. And I didn't know what to do with it because I'm not a novelist. I've tried fiction. I don't think I'm very good at it. And so I held on to this idea, and I would tell people the idea, and they say, that's really funny. You should try to write it. Anyway, fast forward, I married a novelist. So my wife, Jen, has a couple novels come out, and then we're walking, this was years ago, and we're walking around, and she just sold a novel, and she was like, what do I write next? And I said, why don't you just write my book? Because I'm never going to do this, but we both think it's a good idea. And she said, well, why don't we do it together? And so that's what we did. And I wasn't at Entrepreneur at the time. I was long before, but it takes a long time. It took us like 3 years to do this book together. And it was wonderful because she understood how to take a premise and like build characters from it and like, give those characters motivation and figure out what's going to happen. The book comes out in 2018. Right? So it's like 3 years to write it, and then we sell it, and then it's like another year before it comes out. By the time it comes out, I'm editor in chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. Like I'm a completely different role, and this is the first time that I'm in a public role. Right before, I was just like a random magazine editor; nobody ever heard of me. But now I'm in a public role, so people are reacting to the news of this book. I get two very distinct responses depending on how I know the person. So if this is a person from media, then what they tell me is, congratulations, that's so awesome that you and your wife wrote this book and it's out, and that's so cool. And entrepreneurs, as I was building that network 2 years into being an entrepreneur, they all had a different reaction. And that reaction was, oh, that's interesting. What are you going to do with it? And I couldn't understand this dual reaction until it clicked for me. And what I realized was that my friends in media and I, throughout my career, and I think most people think what I now think of as horizontally, which is to say you do a thing and then you put it out or you whatever, finish it, and then you just move to the next thing. And then you do that thing and then you move to the next thing. And you just kind of move along. That's what I was doing, right? Like I'd spend a couple of years at Men's Health and then I would go to Fast Company. And what I did at Men's Health had really no bearing on Fast Company. But entrepreneurs think vertically. Entrepreneurs think the only reason to do something is because it is the foundation upon which the next thing will be built. And that's a completely different way of thinking.
Yeah.
And once you absorb it, you can apply it, like you were saying, anywhere. You could apply it in building your own business, but you could also very much apply it in building your own career, working inside of other companies. It's really just about always assessing, am I putting myself in the position to do things because I have a thesis about where that will lead me next. And then let me start making decisions about where I invest my time and my energy and what I grow and build for myself as a way of acquisition of skills and network and whatever towards some larger thing. People just don't often think like that. That to me is the primary shift. Like once I realized that, I started to think that way. And then that started to lead me in all sorts of different directions about like what I was investing my time in and how I thought of myself.
Okay, so I have a question, and I'm now turning this conversation that other people are listening in to as my own coaching session.
That's the only reason I have a podcast.
It's so true. It's so true. So I'm curious, okay, so here's how I'm going to frame this question. Do you think that if you, however, were already thinking like an entrepreneur, which I really like, I haven't heard it articulated like this before, and I really think I resonate with the horizontal, vertical analogy that you're using. Let's say that you had already been on a vertical, I'm an entrepreneur, everything that I do is kind of like a foundational building block to the next thing. It's like more of kind of a long-term, like value strategy moving, everything is building on top of each other.
Yeah.
Would you have written the book if that was the mentality that you had? Or can a shadow side of the vertical entrepreneurial way of looking at things be a hindrance to creativity for creativity's sake and art for art's sake, or venture for one thing that I am identifying in myself is that I oftentimes make venture decision based off of relationships where I'm like, this project actually doesn't make sense, but I want to build with this person. So like, do you think that you would have done this kind of offbeat, off the beaten path? Like, because you did it because you had an interesting creative idea and then it got matched with a person you wanted to build and create with. And if you had entrepreneurial, like vertical thinking, would you have gone, nope, that's too far out. It doesn't lead to the next thing. And could we maybe, as your fans and community, be really sad because this work wouldn't exist because it wasn't strategic enough?
So I've interviewed a lot of celebrities, and my favorite thing that they ever say to me is when they say, nobody's ever asked me that question before. Because I was like, yes, because you get asked so many questions. Liz, nobody has ever asked me that question before. That is a wonderful question. It really, like, what you're doing is you're taking this thing that I just said and then almost crashing it into the Malcolm Gladwell thing that I said earlier. And the answer is it would have depended on what my thesis was for myself at the time. So it's almost like, yes, it could have, but it would have depended upon what I was thinking about, what I was doing with myself. So, for example, the thing that I knew was that I wanted to create an ownable platform for myself so that I wasn't forever reliant upon jobs in the media industry, especially as you were seeing the boat sink.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of theories about what that would be, and I had stumbled my way into all sorts of funny dead ends. In 2013, I created a series of like insanely viral tumblers. Remember, people were making single topic tumblers. So like my biggest one was called Selfies at Funerals, and like selfies at funerals, Liz, like Weird Al referenced it in a song. It was everywhere. I was getting, for like 2 years, I would get calls from newspapers around the world. They were like, we're writing a story about selfies and we have to have the selfies at funerals guy. Like, it was crazy, but I didn't know what to do with that. Like, what am I going to do? Be the selfies guy? Like, that's got a real expiration date. So I didn't know, but I liked poking around, like kind of seeing where the opportunity was. And I definitely could have had a theory back then of my wife and I will write this novel and it'll do well. And then like my wife and I will become a novel writing team,
Mm-hmm.
and that'll be fun. And maybe we'll start teaching classes on writing, and like she'll do the fiction stuff and I'll do the nonfiction, and like that'll be fun. So I think depending on whatever my thesis was at the time, I could have seen a way in which that makes sense. I definitely do approach new opportunities from both perspectives, which is not just how does this get me where I want to go? Because I don't really define where I want to go. But sometimes it is, I really want to do this. Is there a way in which this makes sense? Can I see the thing that I could extract from this that would create value? And now I have this other layer that I filter things through, which is, can I deliver 100% of the value while only using 30% of my brain? So in other words, the way to do more in my world, because I do a lot of things. I've got an entrepreneur. I've got this early stage founder private network thing. I run content for a community called Uncharted. I travel and I do keynote speaking. I book podcasts, newsletter. I do a lot. Shout out for my newsletter. It's called One Thing Better, one way each week to be more successful and satisfied and build a career company you love. You can go to onethingbetter.email. Okay, advertisement done. I'm making these decisions in many ways by thinking, what do I intuitively know how to do so that I can walk into a situation there's not like a steep learning curve, right? I know how to digest this information and help this team with their content strategy. I know how to build a talk. I know how to, whatever, like it's not going to take all of my brain, but it delivers 100% of the value and everybody's happy. And like, that's where I see like exciting expansion. So all of which is a windy way to answer your question of, yes, I think there is a world in which that could have been relevant. And I could have still done that book, but also a world in which maybe I didn't. But also maybe that's fine, because that book was so fun, but it didn't change my life. Like, it was a wonderful project that we did, and I'm so glad we did it. But also it led to nothing except that the book is out, and that's cool. But maybe there was something else to do at that time. I don't know.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I think, yeah. Even your point, my kid just got this book. I don't even know where they got it from. A grandparent must have given it to her or something, because it wasn't mine. So it was one of those things where you're reading the book and you're like reading it along with the kid for the first time.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of this, like, kind of, I don't know, one of those the old Chinese proverbs. I feel like when you say proverbs, it's like it's either Chinese or African, but no one actually fact checks it. We have no idea where this came from.
It actually came from a blog in 2017.
Right. Right. But the premise being, and I've heard this in the proverb form too, like something happens, like the old Chinese farmer, someone comes by and says, actually, I'm gifting you with 5 cows. And all the neighbors say, that's so amazing. And the Chinese farmer looks back and says, maybe so, maybe not. My kid just got this in like kid book form. So it just goes through of like, this happened. And he was like, and it was so great, but maybe not. And it turns bad. And then the next page. And so it's just like flipping this. So even that sense of like, was it good? Was it good? And was it right? We have no idea, right? It's like the parallel universe of like, because I reacted almost really defensively on your behalf. I was almost just like, Jason, it doesn't matter if it wasn't like, you did this thing and you did it with your wife and like, it was creative and there was partnership. So yes, it was good and it should exist in the world. But who am I? Like, who am I to say that there wasn't something else that you could have been doing?
Yeah.
But I do think that is where defining our own metrics for success, the work that you do around how did you phrase it again? Coming up with the thing that doesn't change even when things change.
The thing that does not change in times of change.
In times of change. There you go. Sounds very familiar too. I do these 2 to 3 day intensive, I call them focus labs, which are like really intensive, kind of comprehensive life, vocational career coaching, typically with people who are at a big transition in their vocational moment. And the whole thing kind of culminates in, I call it your life mission statement. And it's the exact same thing where we are trying to create something that is so core to your essence that it's true today and it'll be true 15 years from now, but it'll also be true 60 years from now, even if your life on the outside, looks really different. Yeah. And I think in order for people to do that, we just have to be really in touch with what our metric of success is, and understanding and knowing. I think the people that live the most fulfilled, happy lives have very specific metrics of success that are not linear or easily defined by somebody who's like looking at their life. I don't really feel like I articulated that very well, but instead of being like, I get this job at this, like this, at this moment in time, and then I hire this, and then I get my company to this level, and then it sells for this much. It's so much more based on like the quality of our life. I've started doing this thing just this year where I'm trying to get more in touch with that of like, what does success look like for me? But can it not be this like fluffy, like, because sometimes I think when you say that, people are like, well, it's not very motivating to have some kind of like squishy edge thing. And so I have a spreadsheet right now and I fill it out every single day of my life. And every column has something in it that I care about because I'm interested in figuring out, like, can I get hard data on squishy things to build? Because with the belief that that's,
fill this in a little bit. Like, what are the categories and what are you putting down? Like, what'd you put in today or yesterday?
Yeah. So the categories are how much time I'm spending on different projects that I'm working on, how much time I'm spending with my kids, how present I feel with my kids, my marriage, how much time I spent with my friends, my like emotional state, where I was mentally, my sense of creativity and like fulfillment. So I have these like, some are just like hours, like this is how many hours I spent with my friends. And then next to how much time I spent with my friends, it's like I code it green, red, or yellow, kind of based off of like relationally how good or healthy or connected do I feel. That's a very important metric for me, is relationships and community and connection, and kind of trying to blend the two, because if I don't, what I find is that I default to something that's easily definable, which is like, how big are my companies? How much money am I making? How much attention am I getting from other people? But I'm like, I know deep in my core, I don't give a shit about those things. Like that isn't what drives me, but they're defined for me. So if I don't do the work to like notice, catalog, define, and track these kind of squishier metrics, I'll just default to the things that like that has a number to it and it's either successful or not.
So I love that. I told you I kind of keep coming up with these theories of things. And here's one that is not fully formed. So I don't know, maybe we could do something with it. Yeah. I had this thought that what we are all trying to accomplish is not a specific outcome the way that we generally think of outcomes. So, for example, like you were just saying, the size of the company or the whatever, like that's a specific outcome. And what we all know and what we've been told a million times is if you set that goal and then you achieve that goal, it will not feel like fulfillment. You'll just start looking for the next, right? So that comes out of some of those ancient Chinese proverbs.
Or African. We're not
African.
really sure.
Sure, or fine. We're fine. Or a quote from Maya Angelou that didn't come from Maya Angelou. So whatever.
That was actually Cindy Crawford.
Yeah.
So, but details.
But it was actually Cindy Crawford's assistant. Here's the outcome that I think that we all, and this is like, again, this is not, I haven't written this down anywhere yet, so this is not crystallized in my head, but I think that the outcome that we're all looking for is actually what I'm calling a state of being. And that if we can identify what that state of being is for ourselves, then like every project that we take on is really just measured on whether or not it continues to put us in and keeps us in the state of being that we want. So that sounds kind of abstract, but like, here's what it is for me. I came to this realization that the thing that I really love is that I have built a life where I wake up every morning and I know I've got a lot of interesting people to talk to and I've got a lot of interesting things that are waiting for me, and that I get to be on the move a lot. I get to go fly out to that thing and do that thing, and that the thing that I actually want isn't any of these individual things, but what it really is the collective experience of momentum. Like that's the state of being that I actually just want. I just want to be in momentum. And the challenge that I have in my life is that achieving that momentum and the anxiety of not maintaining that momentum forces me to give up some of the other things that I want as part of this life. So, for example, look, a way that I've defined success for myself in the near term is success will be when I feel comfortable walking away from the computer for an hour and a half each day to have coffee with a friend. If I can do that, then I've reached some state of of being where like I have momentum, but I also know that that momentum is carrying itself such that I can like chill out a little bit and take advantage of spending time with the people that I've gotten to know and love. So that is more important to me than really any of the projects that I have. It's that state of being. And that is by itself an outcome. Like that is an outcome to
Right.
drive towards. It's just a different way of thinking about outcome. What do you think?
I literally have a column in my spreadsheet that's called The Lady Who Lunches. And I track when I do that. It's like a metric for success for me. It's not always lunch, but it's, did you take time away from your office and from your work to go on a walk with somebody, to go to lunch or to go to coffee? Because I have identified that to me is a metric for success of the type of life. But similarly to you, and Lady Who Lunches is kind of ironic because I would be so depressed and in a fetal position if all I did was be a lady who lunched, where it's like that. So for me, that combination of I'm being challenged, I feel creative, I have momentum, I have optionality is super important to me. I've realized that I like waking up in the morning and going, where am I going to spend my time and energy today? And also, I do feel like I have multiple opportunities more on a meta level that I'm like evaluating, experimenting with. So I completely agree. I'm also a little bit struck by how similar we've gotten so nuanced that like our definition of success being this interesting cross place between momentum and options and creativity, but also with the spaciousness to like really deeply connect and have freedom. I have identified that like freedom is a huge value for me. Like I like waking up and having a sense of, not all the time, because there are definitely times, you know this too, especially if you've got like a keynote business. That's the most extreme, that it's just like, I have to be at this place at this exact time. I have days in my schedule where I have zero flexibility. Like I will literally get fired and never hired again if I just decide that my core value today is freedom and flexibility. But that having hyper not freedom and flexibility on a Tuesday actually creates freedom and flexibility for me on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And so I agree. And I also think, there's just so much thoughtfulness. It's a lot of self-reflection. I think that has to go into defining success. And I don't meet a lot of people that I feel like do that. And I don't know if it's a time thing or if it's just like an imagination thing. Like if I just shared my spreadsheet and was like, you can fill in anything that you want, but like, here are some examples. You know how sometimes it's easier to edit than it is to like create. But I mean, that it really, really resonates with me.
Yeah. That's funny. We have very similar goals. I just haven't made a spreadsheet out of it. Well, we'll have to get lunch and then congratulate ourselves for the success of our lunching.
My next step, I really want to hire. So if anybody is listening to this considers themselves a data artist, that would be my next step. So I now have almost 3 months of data. And I want somebody who could build like a dashboard for me that would be a more beautiful and easy to read, like visual. But I also think one thing that I want to point out is we both used words like freedom or momentum, which isn't inherently good or bad. It's very unique to the person. One thing I think is happening in culture right now is we are way over-indexing on positive emotions, and it's leaving people feeling really depressed. And here's what I mean by that. I feel like we're like, I want to wake up and feel happy. And anything that isn't happy is down. So I just had this experience. I think I'm going to make a documentary. That feels even scary to say out loud. I don't think I've said that publicly yet. I'm not a documentary filmmaker.
I'm excited. Well, I'm honored to be the first one to hear it before everyone else does. And I'm excited to hear what the documentary is. What is it?
Well, it's about community and connection. It's, I think the working title is It Makes a Village. I don't want to totally derail our conversation, but something you probably don't know about me that my listeners do is that I'm like fanatical about the loneliness epidemic and the importance of relationships and dense support networks. The concept is if you're in America, likelihood is you weren't born into a village. So if you think it takes a village, you're going to have to make a village. And I've kind of spent the last 15 years of my life really turning my businesses and my personal life into a social experiment of like, I spent a lot of time overseas in my young entrepreneurial journey. so had this very formative moment early on where I was like, America is not normal. Like, I think a lot of people move to Africa and they're like, oh my God, culture shock, poverty. And I moved to Africa and was like, oh my gosh, culture shock. The rest of the world lives connected to each other and they help each other and they have these dense networks of support. And so I came back home to America and was kind of like, do you have to live in rural Africa or India or Southeast Asia to experience that kind of village life? Or can you be an American who like has a job and drives a minivan and has a 401k, but is like designing a really connected life? I'm writing a book about it too, but I was feeling some resistance and I was like, I think it's film. I think I need to tell this story in film, but what do I do? Like, I've never made a film. That feels like such a huge undertaking. And so a series of things happened. I found a director within like 2 weeks of kind of putting it into the universe. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I need a buddy. And I need a buddy who knows how to make a film. And then I got my buddy. And then like the first conversation that I had with anybody about it, not online, in real life, the literal first time I ever talked about it out loud, this guy sitting at the table was like, I want to fund that. And I want to fund the whole thing.
Amazing.
And I was like, wait, what? I've raised capital before. I'm an entrepreneur. It's never happened for me that easy.
Yeah.
Like I've worked for the money. Okay. This story comes, and this is where I'm bringing myself back to my point. There's been a couple conversations as of recently that have made me go, I don't think this guy is the right fit. And I'm having some reservations. And I got so excited about somebody just being like, here's a check. I didn't even have to ask for it. I'm just going to hand it to you, that I didn't ask the questions I would normally ask when I'm fundraising, when I'm actually having to work for it. And they're vetting me and I'm vetting them. The point is, I had this really hard day where I decided I have a dream and someone wants to fund my dream. And I think I'm going to say no. And I'm going to break up with this guy. And that means I'm going back to like zero. And I have no idea how to raise money for films. Like that is not my world. And, and so it's like, it was a dark day when the realization came, I don't think that this is what I thought it was. And so I made the decision and I'm feeling like so blue and I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm like feeling all of these emotions. And then the time comes for me to fill out my spreadsheet for my day. And I literally have a column where I'm like mental and emotional state, red, yellow, or green. And so I'm like, red, this is a shitty day. Like I'm so sad. And here's what I'm feeling: sad, overwhelmed, really confused. Like, why did this happen? If this guy wasn't my like great, like angel benefactor, why did he even come into the story in the first place? I just wasted so much time. I was mad at myself. I was frustrated that I didn't think through these things, 30 days ago.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, red. And then I just had this moment where I was like, wait, is this red? Like, are these emotions that are negative emotions, when you say the type of life that you want to live, which is one of momentum, creativity, risk-taking, like actually frustration, overwhelm, regret, those are actually like kind of all requisite things that you would think you would need to experience a certain percentage of the time in order to live the life that you want to live. That feels very different to me than like a mental state that's like, I made a mistake and I just got in a mental loop and I couldn't stop beating myself up for it. That to me is like red mental state of like, there's no version of your best life in which you're losing sleep because you're beating yourself up over something. But feeling frustration, feeling sadness, feeling like just getting even more nuanced. And I think, and so then I made the conscious decision where I was like, today was a green day. And I was like, it was green. And then I made notes. Here are all the negative emotions that I felt, but I am categorizing that based off of the life that I want to live as like requisite good emotions that should accompany someone who's trying to live this type of life. And it just got me thinking that I feel like we're so obsessed with happiness. And any day that I feel any emotion other than happiness, we're like, that's a bad day. And I'm like, that's a completely not only impossible standard, but I don't actually even think it's right that someone who's happy every day is actually happy at the end of their life. Does that make sense?
That was wonderful. That was a great story. That was a great takeaway. I loved every part of it. For what it's worth, it also reminded me of this thing that a friend of mine who is like I don't know, he's got some fancy title at Sotheby's, but he said that one of the people he works with at Sotheby's always says, $1 is not inherently better than $0, which is
Ooh.
true. It's what a great line. $1 is not always inherently better than $0. And it's true. That was the case here.
Yeah.
He was willing to give you the money, but it was not going to be the experience that you wanted. It wasn't going to be the output that you wanted. So then it wasn't the right decision just because the money was there. I have not thought about, but as you've been talking, I've been thinking about the amount of messaging around happiness that is out there. So many bestsellers about books about happiness, so many podcasts about happiness. People are searching for it. Now that tells you something. It tells you something that people don't feel like they have it. And there's an interesting question about self-definition here. Are you living a happy life, but you're not measuring it properly because you're not waking up in the morning like bounding out of bed? I live a happy life. I don't wake up in the morning bounding out of bed. I wake up in the morning frankly annoyed that I have to wake up at 6:40 and get these kids out the door. Like, that's annoying to me. I don't want to do that. And then a lot of the things that I do during the day don't make me happy. I mean, I got this like insane to-do list, and I have, you and I are talking at 5 p.m. I started working at 7:30 in the morning. I don't like that. That's not good. That's bad. And this isn't even the end of the day for me. So like, I will not end today feeling like every single thing that I did today makes me happy. A couple things did. This conversation made me happy. This was a lovely conversation. But we have to measure ourselves by, this gets me back to state of being, really. Like, it's about what am I doing that is contributing to the overall place that I want to be, not measuring myself by the individual experiences. But also, we have to know that as humans, our natural instinct is actually to be at an emotional baseline. It just is. Our human experience is to be at an emotional baseline, and for good reason. If we become too excited and we stay in that excitement too long, then we can't self-regulate. If we're too sad and we stay in that sadness for too long, we can't self-regulate. We come back to zero. We just always do. And this is what I tell myself when something goes really wrong and I just feel like crap. I always just tell myself, like, give it a day.
Yeah.
You will return to baseline. You just will. And so it feels bad now, but like, you naturally will get back there. And then I do. And so you cannot expect to wake up every morning off of baseline. That's not literally how your body is built. It's not the way your brain developed for evolutionary reasons. It's wonderful to feel happy. We should seek that happiness. We shouldn't expect smiles on our face to be the designate of whether or not we're following the right paths for ourselves. I think this is a wonderful insight.
Jason, we could keep going, and maybe we should. We should. I might pop back in. I might slide back into your inbox and ask for a round 2 because I'm feeling really energized by this conversation.
This has been a great conversation. I've loved this.
I really, really just appreciate your thoughtfulness, both on sharing your personal story and lived experience, but then also your ideas around both your experiences and how that, teaches you about just like the shared experiences of us as humans. So thank you so much for joining us on the show, and we'll stay in touch.
We will. We better, because this was we hit this off really well here. Can I just tell you one last thing, which is I was thinking about emotional baseline, which you're just talking about. Had a conversation with Chris Bosh, NBA All-Star, and he teamed up with Dwayne Wade and LeBron James for this like Miami Heat super team, and I'm a Miami Heat fan, so it was very exciting to talk to him. And they lost the NBA Finals that first year that they were a super team. And I asked him what went wrong, and he said our highs were too high and our lows were too low when we were playing against the Dallas Mavericks, who didn't let that happen to themselves. Like, no matter win-loss, they just like marched forward. There's like, well, whatever happens next, right? And I think about that a lot. I think that a lot because like the loss sucks, but you know what? Sometimes celebrating the win too much, sometimes like being like, I'm happy, I will stay in this happiness, also makes us miss the thing that we really need to do. Baseline is good. Baseline is fine. Baseline is clarity. And that is ultimately the state of being that you need to be to get the state of being that you want. And with that, Liz, let's talk again.